I just want to play spell builds. Like, I'm not like, I just want to play spell builds. Can I play spell builds? I want to play spell builds. That's what I normally do. What I do mostly. And yet every time I go live, everyone's gonna be like, "Yo, GHAZZY, want to make a Reaper build? Yo, GHAZZY, what about Absolution? Yo, GHAZZY, you gonna play Spectres? What about your DB build? Yo, GHAZZY, when are you gonna go back to ED Contagion?" I'm like, eh. Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video. Today we have just finished reading through the 3.15 patch notes. There's a lot of things in here, a lot of shit. So I'm just gonna do a TLDR of my take on it. And basically my take on this is that there's a lot of very weird changes to flasks. I like the idea of them doing something with flasks. I'm not a big fan of the way the approach they took, but there's a lot of weird changes because it seems like they're doing again one of those double or even triple nerfs to it, where we now have to pay more charges for the flasks to be using them. We gain less flask charges from killing monsters, and all the flasks are cut down so much in power, which is so weird to me because the idea of the flasks was to, instead of spamming them as permanent high buff powers, they were supposed to be used as situational things. Like, I want more damage for that pack or for this boss. Shit, I'm about to take a lot of damage. Let me use my defensive utility flasks. And the problem is that they now have gutted most of, if not all of these flasks down to the point where that's barely worth using. I might as well have 5 fucking life flasks. That's how I see it. I'm not very happy with the double down approach that they've done on the flasks. So that's my take on the flask changes. The changes they seem to have done, their idea, their philosophy based on the patch notes has been to generate a higher build diversity. The thing is, with a higher build diversity, that would be in the case where a lot of abilities are going to be on somewhat of an equal playing field, but there's always going to be a meta in games like this where some builds will stick out a little bit more and be better, right? And that's kind of what I was expecting them to achieve. But when you see buffs like buffing Dominating Blow's initial hit damage, which no one ever cared about or ever used, because that's not how you play Dominating Blow, or when you see buffs like Dual Strike, which nobody pretty much used, like, this is a very significant buff that they're doing, as an example. Now, those things kind of puts us in a situation where it looks very interesting, and it seems to be targeting the idea of generating a position where people are going to be slower, but most of those are going to be in somewhat of an equal playing field. But as we read through all of the patch notes, my only take from it is very simple. There's going to be an extremely high amount of people playing traps and totems and minions. That's it. And the main reason for this is for a lot of different large variety of reasons. For example, totem builds can very easily go for the self-flagellation. Suddenly you reignore the whole idea with the curse problems. And since they've taken away a lot of cast speed and attack speed, you kind of benefit from having a vast majority of sources of you doing damage output. This comes from traps, mines, totems, and mines doesn't seem that good. So traps, totems, and minions allows you to have an army of damage sources that are delivering the damage output rather than having one minion or you running around doing the damage. So I feel like those things is going to be vastly superior in terms of generic clearing. Melee got hit a lot harder than I thought they would be, which is kind of weird because it's not that popular in terms of the vast majority of the player base. A lot of weird changes to certain things are indirectly buffing already highly popular builds. An example of this could be the changes they did to Unbound Ailments, for example. What's really funny with this is that this row here, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but this row right there allows cold converting minion builds to get 3% more, a higher shock effect by default, just like that. And there's a 2% increase effect of the bone chill effect from this. This means that that's 5% more increased damage taken debuff on the enemies, which is essentially worth half a bottle faith, which got gutted, but not the modifier that minion builds used. And because it was gutted, bottle faith is going to be cheaper, most likely, in the coming league. So again, pushing forward with how great that's going to be for minion builds. So a lot of these changes just feels very, very weird. Something that I'm very concerned about, as you probably can have seen in the patch notes yourself, is that pretty much every single ability has gotten an increase to cost and reservation multiplier. This means that the cost of using your abilities is going to be very, very high. And on top of it being very high, it also affects reservation cost for aura plays. So anyone who wants to play an aura that uses something with support gems, for example, like I mentioned, the Unbound Ailment Bone Chill Skitterbot strategy, that's going to cost a gigantic amount of mana to reserve, which does force the skill trees of certain builds, or most of these type of builds, into a category where we have to pick up a lot of mana reservation reductions on the tree. So with all these changes, I feel like the meta in 3.15, what's going to happen is traps, minions, totems, and I think that all of these three builds, well, maybe not the totems, but I think the traps and minions will be very heavily focused towards mana reservation nodes on the tree to be able to afford running these type of approaches. I love the idea of having higher build diversity, but I also feel that these specific builds usually get kind of throttled into or painted into a corner where we are abusing very specific mechanics, such as the Bone Chill on Bound Ailment Skitterbots, or having an elemental damage dealing trap build and then smacking on a Malachite's Artifice so we can use elemental equilibrium still. Things like that, I think, is going to be more of the pressing situations that we're going to see. The thing is, the way I see the meta is that on the popularity ladder of builds, we usually see every league a specific build or two that sits on the golden throne of being the most meta build that everybody wants to play. And that kind of shifts every league for the most part. We've had Aura Stackers, 2 leagues. We've had Hate Forge lately as well, being like the to-go-to choice to play, right? But they tend to cycle a lot. That's the philosophy of what GGG wants. But on the side of this, we have the witch sitting in her hammock asking Chris Wilson to paint her like one of his French girls, just to make sure that, she can always be there on the top of the world, but nobody's going to push that down. And I think the reason for this is because Summoners and Cyclone builds, for that matter, are two very iconic genre of builds, or builds in general, for ARPG builds, games. So I don't think that they're going to be in a position where they can nerf Necromancers down to the point where most people is not going to be able to see it as a very good build. Same thing with Cyclone. So it kind of makes sense in that way. But the nerfs are going to be very interesting. It's going to be very cool to see what we can come up with. It's going to be a very big challenge to tackle making builds leading into 3.15. The chat was talking about this earlier, and I think that's kind of fair, that a lot of these changes requires us to get a feeling for it.
The Moth Pit crew is blessed to have such a VIP member aboard.
In this sad time of the community, a moment of happiness. 20 months and counting.
That's basically all I have to say when it comes to the approach of what's happening and the nerfs. But I think the biggest one that we have to look out for is the flasks, as well as the increased mana reservation multipliers, as well as the mana cost of everything. Anyways, hit the like button for more content, and subscribe, of course, and let me know in the comments below what you guys feel about the patch notes. I think that we're gonna see a lot of people hating on it and a lot of people enjoying it, but do let me know what you guys think. Until next time, boys, stay safe.